Hey everyone, thank you for being here a little bit early. As you come in, work group members, I'll go ahead and call your names and we'll just do a quick mic check now so that we don't have to do it during the meeting. So Chris Smith, I see you on my screen. Can you unmute and say hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right.
And Amelia.
Hi there, how are you?
Hi, Amelia. Great, thank you. And I see Jennifer Pippin.
Here, thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I guess I can turn my camera on. And Jamie Merchant. Jamie, can you unmute? Okay, I'll go back to Jamie. Tasha Bates, I see you on my screen. Can you unmute? Just do a quick mic check.
I am here.
Hi, Tasha. Thank you.
No problem.
Michelle Jarrett. Michelle Jarrett, quick mic check. She can't hear me. Oh, Michelle. Okay, we're still working on it on our side. That's why we brought you in early this time to hopefully get this part of it, this little housekeeping part out of the way. Okay, Lori Pick, I see you on my screen. Can we do a quick mic check, Lori?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's see. Do I have any other? All I can see is the lobby on that screen.
Jamie Merchant said she's good now. She had her headphones connected.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And Michelle Beavers, did you call her?
I don't see her here yet.
Okay.
Michelle, you're here? Yes. Okay. Hi, Julie. Terry Adams. How about Christy Humberger? Michelle Jarrett?
Here.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Jamie Merchant.
Sorry.
Jamie, I think you said you were there, right?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, yes, thank you.
Okay, great,
And
thank you.
Ruth Witter. So we're waiting for Terry. We're waiting for Terry, Christy, and Ruth. Terry, Christy, and Ruth. Do you guys see them in the lobby?
Christy Humberger's here.
Christy Humberger, she's not in yet.
Christy.
Ruth Witter. Okay, sorry about that. We're trying to get all this piece out of the way so that when we bring everybody in, it's a lot. It's hard to find all the names once everybody's admitted at once. So we're trying it this way this time. Okay, it is 1 o'clock. So if my colleagues, can you guys admit everybody? Go ahead and admit everyone from the lobby. And I'm going to bring up the PowerPoint. There we go.
Amber, Christy Humberger said Amber unmuted and no video. That's in the chat.
Okay. Christy. Okay. Okay, they're working on getting her unmuted. Thank you for that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and begin. Welcome to the Library Media Workgroup. Thank you for being here. We do have members of the public on this call, so please keep yourself on mute until the end of the meeting. Also, members of the public, please do not use the chat. Please use that avenue. Julie, I'm hearing that you can't hear anything. Try to go out and come back in. And I'm not hearing you on my computer either. I'm hearing you from someone else's computer. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Please do not use the chat unless you are a work group member. At the end of the meeting, there will be an opportunity for the public to provide comments. My name is Amber Bombach. I'm the Director of Library Media and Instructional Materials here at the Florida Department of Education. Workgroup members have all been introduced at previous meetings. So the purpose of us meeting together is because in statute, House Bill 1467 amended section 1006.29 subsection 6 to read, the department shall develop an online training program for school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library media and collections or materials maintained on a reading list. This training must assist reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 subsection 2. The department shall make this training available no later than January 1st, 2023, no later than July 1st, 2023, and annually thereafter. Each superintendent must certify to the department that all school librarians and media specialists employed by the district have completed the online training program. So that is the task that we are here today to work on. So let's jump right into previous work. So last week we viewed intro slides. We viewed intro slides for the initial training that's been created thus far. So for the sake of brevity, I didn't include them here, but I've taken the sections on collection development policy, selection and maintenance, peer-reviewed journals, and collections based on reader interest that workgroup members have created, and I've made small edits to formatting and placed sections where they seem to fit. Also, a note here, we were directed to create a training on all of these topics through House Bill 1467. I know a lot of this may seem like information that media specialists already know, but these topics in the training directed by statute are for brand new media specialists as well as more experienced librarians. Workgroup members were emailed these slides on Friday so that they had time to look this over in preparation for today's meeting. But for the benefit of the public on today's call, I'll briefly go over these slides. Workgroup members, as I'm going through these, please make notes of any edits that need to be made. So we'll jump right into our collection development policies. And again, these are the slides that you have seen previously, just kind of formatted a little bit differently. There's a quote here about library collection development. And then we jump into collection development provides guidelines for selecting materials. It describes the process for weeding or deselection of materials. Collection development also determines the retention, preservation, and archiving of materials. And then we go a little bit deeper. Why is it important to have a collection development policy? There's some ideas there. And then again, this is our statute 1006.28 subsection 2D that tells us that we have to create this training, but it also talks about It also. It also talks about the responsibilities of the district. Sorry, it seems like we're having a little bit of confusion about, seems like there's some people that cannot hear. If you can't hear, please leave the meeting and come back. Can you guys put that in the chat maybe? Okay, so this next slide breaks it down that the district school board has the constitutional duty and responsibility to select and provide adequate instructional materials, including those found in school libraries or media centers for all students. This goes further into district school board, their specific duties and responsibilities. This brings up our harmful to minors statute 847.012. Each school district shall provide training to school librarians and media specialists regarding the prohibition against distributing harmful materials to minors under that statute, and it's linked there in that slide. And then we go into the collection development process, goals, who's your audience, acquisition, how are materials, how do you get them, weeding, and preservation. And then this slide jumps further into those components of collection development. And then we go into the objectives of the media center. There's a little mission statement, if you will, about what a media center is. And then diving a little bit deeper into what should the library or media center provide. And then what makes a well-rounded school media center library collection, supporting curriculum, meeting high standards, balancing cost with need, promoting global and cultural perspectives, and using a variety of resources and formats.
Okay, I was muted until just now. Can we go back a slide or two, or is that okay?
Yeah, I'm quickly going through them for the benefit of the public, and then we'll ask questions at the end.
Great. I couldn't hear because it was on mute. I was muted. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then some questions that we can ask for our collection development policies. How do we know what we have? What makes a good collection? How do we choose titles? And then jumping into the next section is selection and maintenance of school library materials. There's a little blurb about that. And again, I'm just going through these quickly. The work group has seen all of these slides previously. Some questions to ask for evaluation. Are we meeting users' needs? Does the collection provide access to materials? Does it include formats that users prefer? Here are some ways to evaluate your current collection. I put a little note up there under the 10 items. I know we talked about that last time about maybe that's not what we use anymore. So we can research that a little bit more to see if that should be included or not. Assessing the physical collection, balancing collection, fiction and nonfiction, analysis, and then evaluating the entire collection. Here's a couple sample 5-year purchase plans. And then some ideas for selecting new materials. We can survey our stakeholders. We're looking at our curriculum needs, interests of our readers, looking at our purchasing goals, looking at peer reviews, looking at award lists. And then we go into stakeholders. Our stakeholders are our students, teachers, parents, our committees. And there's some ideas down there at the bottom. Reader interest standards and academic needs of student and faculty. Some ideas there for meeting those needs, specialized curriculum, using the school performance or improvement plan, looking at the school mission and vision. Budget, of course, is an important consideration. And then our section on peer reviews. And then again, the statute that is in is mentioned right there at the top. And then a quote from Marcia Martis. And here's our peer review section, examples of journals to look, periodicals to look at to get our reviews from, and we're going to avoid crowdsourced materials or options. School community stakeholders, just a little note there that we may want to include questions on how to seek stakeholder involvement. There are some examples on the sides and ideas. Then we jump to maintenance, inventory, deciding on your library organization, deleting items if they're missing, knowing your cataloging profile.
The DOE meeting.
Processing new books. Again, this is more technical information that a media specialist would need to know coming into a library. And what we do with damaged books. Again, more technical things. And then I just threw this in there as a placeholder. We will be talking about weeding or book removal, or what we call weeding, today. And we will throw those slides in there once we've discussed them. So this is the end of the training slides for this section. Workgroup members, at this time, I'll ask for any general concerns or feedback that you may have. If you spotted a grammatical error or word choice or something like that, please keep note of those. You can note the slide number if you have that, and you can email them to me, or we can discuss them at our next meeting. Any overall general feedback on these slides that were presented today?
I did notice the Sora icon that probably needs to remove, as cute as it was. So, I mean,
Okay.
It looks great, but if you're trying not to support certain companies. Also, we had talked about not listing the peer reviews, but that is listed in the bill analysis. So I'm not quite sure if we are able to list them, that would be helpful for those new media specialists who really might not know what they are. And I didn't know, since they were actually mentioned in the bill analysis, if we were allowed to do that.
Right, and those are good suggestions. I will follow up with that and see if we would be allowed to list those journals and review articles.
Or even if we put the link to the bill analysis, that might work.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I still need to update those. I'll get those to you this week, Amber.
That's okay, thank you.
And I mean, if we can't do it there, can we have an appendix or something like that?
Possibly, yeah, that's an idea. I'm not sure. But we'll find out. We can present it that way with the names of the journals and see if they need to be removed or not. Because I agree, I think it's important to share those resources with new media specialists that may not know what they are, that they exist. Okay, any
This
other?
is Paul here at the department. I just see a couple of hands. I want to encourage board members to jump in. Ms. Pippin, I just would go ahead and unmute. You don't have to worry about raising your hand. Just jump in. I think Ms. Beavers had a comment. I think y'all should just go ahead and just jump in.
Yes, please.
Well, one of my comments, I didn't think we were allowed to put those suggestions on our training. That was one of the things I was concerned about, that wasn't going to be allowed to start with.
Which suggestions are those that you're referring to?
The sites to go for the different sites we listed as crowdsourced, those sites.
I think that's a question of whether we are allowed to put those on the training or not. I think we can place them there and then, see what happens in the editing and routing process.
Okay. Also, So maybe we should make a note that some of those sites that we're suggesting, like the ALA, would not necessarily mean that those books are okay for what we're looking for. In other words, they still might be in violation. So it's not a pass for those areas.
Okay, well,
And
do this area,
But that slide was just simply a listing of peer reviews. It wasn't stating the actual books. It was just saying that those are peer reviewed options.
Sure, but okay.
Yeah, and I think we need to definitely look at the law. All of this is written in the law, and I think maybe an appendix would be good. But if there's a bill analysis, that's going to be harder for the librarians to have to go back and forth, in my opinion. So I think an appendix would be good, and just follow the law and what's written in the bill.
This is Julie. I have some comments on slide 29. I like listing examples of peer reviews, and I think for ease of understanding, it might be helpful to sort of say, use peer reviews and also say avoid crowdsourced. And then at the end, include an appendix that maybe says, how do you determine what is peer reviewed and what is crowdsourced? So then we're not, we're giving librarians and school personnel the tools they need to make those decisions themselves without explicitly recommending one periodical over another.
And we can put the definition of both of those in there. What is crowdsourced? What is peer reviewed? And then again, going back to statute, that it's required in statute that they be peer reviewed.
Yes, and also, and if we can include an appendix, which I think would be great, include, a discussion of bias, and this is all about trying to avoid bias.
Michelle, Jarrett, what was the phrase that they now say for instead of the 10 items? There's a new little phrase that they say. What do we need to swap it to that?
Yeah,
statement?
and I put the link in our comments from when we were discussing that, the SACS accreditation, which I can send out again. SACS accreditation requires that you have an appropriate program for library media that supports the goals of the school. Whatever that program looks like. When the evaluators come in to do your SACS accreditation, they're looking at how your library is used to support the school goals. And they're checking to see how the library resources are used in support of the school programming. So it's very fluid, and it's up to the school to defend their library in terms of how it supports the school as a resource. But I'll share that out with everybody.
And I also think it's important to note that the law states professional peer review. So we definitely have to have that in the training as well.
I have a question about slide 30, which is about school community stakeholders, where we say seek stakeholder involvement. And then I believe so the statute says require consultation of ... school community stakeholders. Would it be helpful to define what consultation means and what it does not mean? Like, I'm thinking specifically, where does the decision-making authority ultimately reside?
Well, the statute says the decision-making authority ultimately resides with the principal.
Yes, I just wonder if it would be helpful to reiterate that and make it more clear. We want stakeholder input, but I want to be clear that I want it to be clear who's ultimately on the hook for the decisions.
Sure, like consultation means you consult. Yeah. They don't approve everything. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
I think I agree with that, because there has been thought that if I'm on this committee and I'm making this input, you should be listening. And I'm making, does that make sense that I'm making that say? When it does say that it's ultimately the principal's decision in that state's statute, right? The media specialist cultivates it. The media committee gives input. The principal makes the decision.
I think that would be a helpful clarification.
Even if we created a timeline almost, I think that is also a good way to look at it too. So we give us a delineated process for how we cultivate collections.
Or what about a flow chart? Like it
That's
starts
what I
here,
meant. I
it
said a
comes to
timeline,
here.
but like I
But
said a timeline, but my hands were moving in a
we're
flow
moving in a
direction.
flow chart way.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it goes to here, it goes to here. And then in my
Yeah.
district, it actually comes to me as well as
Yeah.
the supervisor
Yep.
to, you know, kind of make sure it follows our district collection plan as well.
Can I ask who, Michelle, was this your slides originally?
It
The
was.
community
Yes,
stakeholders?
ma'am.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind updating
Yeah,
the
totally.
journal ones to the specific things we talked about, and then this one as well.
Absolutely.
To help with all those issues, that would be great. And then I'll throw in yours and we will discuss it next time. Okay, any other big ideas, questions, or concerns about the training thus far?
So
I have a question actually. When I'm trying to think of this from a, I'll say business standpoint, when you're training somebody on something, is there really any, and I'm sorry, I've been gone all weekend. I just sat down and I'm trying to collect my thoughts and review everything that you sent on Friday. But is there any way, is there anything, I'm sorry, in these slides that say if a problem arises, this is how you handle it, go through X, Y, and Z? Because I feel like that we're quoting a lot of statute, and sometimes the verbiage is just confusing. So I think if we find a way to say, here's what you do if this problem arises, or this problem arises, this is how you react, or the steps you take to solve that issue type thing. I don't think I see any of that
That's a
in
good
the
point.
presentations.
That's a good point, Jamie, and I think we are missing that element so far, and we do need to add in something about, also in statute, school districts are required to have an objection policy, and we need to follow the school district policies and procedures as far as that goes, and that does need to be included in the training. I absolutely agree. So Jamie, if you wouldn't mind take a look at the training that we presented thus far and see where you think we should add that section, that would be great, and we'll go ahead and add that in.
Okay, thank you.
I was on and off when I was trying to stay in the meeting earlier, and I may have missed it. So did we have a slide in there that says we have to, they're supposed to put things in the library that are from both different views? Was that in this group?
I don't believe we've covered that yet.
Okay, never mind then.
Isn't that instructional materials and not library?
No, this was for, I thought it was in a library slide, but I, like I said, I was on and off trying to stay in the meeting, so.
Right. No, what I mean was, I think that policy is about instructional materials and not library materials, but Amber can clarify.
I wasn't sure if you covered that slide, okay.
It does say on slide 8, under collection development, provide guidelines for selecting materials for the collection of the library that are balanced.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it also talked about well-rounded library collections too, and collection development as well.
Okay. So it just said balanced, okay.
But I guess my point though, Ms. Beavers, is there's language that you think might be more helpful. I just want to encourage work group members to, you're asking questions as well, also throw them out, like what ideas would it say? What would you like for it to say? I think that will be super helpful. And my hope is that you will take these slides and mark them up and say, okay, I would think this wording is better here. So just for my folks, this is an iterative process. So what you see today is by no means final. So my hope is, when I put my teacher and principal hat back on, is that you will do some homework here, and please, please, please mark those things up. As Amber shared, she shared that there was a piece of the training that was missing. So what my hope is that parents will mark it up, put your ideas in there, all work group members, so we can make sure that we've got that. Because we want to be able to capture all of this feedback that we're getting.
Right, that's, I was going to email her later, but I wasn't sure what wording they'd use, because before I think it said something different.
Gotcha, that's perfect. Yeah, we appreciate that.
So can I ask a question or make a point? But when we're saying balanced collections, are we as a work group in agreement that we are not saying that when we're teaching something about, let's use Texas as an example, and the Holocaust, when we say balanced collections, we're not saying we also have to say, have books in our collection that say it didn't happen? Like, we're not saying that as part of this training.
Right, I understand that.
I'm asking you guys as a work
Yes.
group, are
Oh.
we in agreement that that is something we as a work group believe that we're not going to teach the opposite side of history for the sake of having books in that teach the opposite side of history?
I would hope not.
And I want to say,
Agreed.
Michelle, that we did discuss that last week because we were talking about on slide 17, D, point D, it had said materials on opposing sides of controversial issues, and we changed the word opposing to mean that it would be balanced.
Okay.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm good with
So
that
yeah,
one.
so
I was worried about that word opposing, thinking that if we have one view, we have to have the other, and that wouldn't work in some situations like on our
Right.
like the statute we're working with.
Correct. So
So it starts, because I know that in the collection development slides, it starts on slide 16 where we talk about the primary objection of the Educational Media Center, and how we implement a program that will have materials that offer a range of levels, a diversity of appeal and points of view. And then it goes to slide 17 where it describes what that is and what it provides for students. And it also has stuff about instructional supplements, enriching to support the curriculum in variety of interest, abilities, maturity levels, kind of mirroring that those FEP standards, and how it stimulates growth with factual knowledge, literary appreciations, aesthetic values, ethical standards. Those are all meeting the selection goals and policies for school districts. Backgrounds of information enabling intellectual judgments in daily lives. So materials on opposing sides is still there. So if that needs to be changed, that needs to be updated. So I didn't make a note of that. Representing many religious, ethnical, cultural groups, that's all in there. Those are taken from those standards that we have as a state that are in selection policies as well. And then it goes on to slide 18 about what that well-rounded collection looks like visually as well.
So you're saying some of that material is in there, but it sounds
Yeah.
like we need to make it more clear if it wasn't seen, in this short presentation.
Yeah, and I don't know if Ms. Beavers was not in at that time, but that does address what I believe she's discussing.
Okay.
So
That's looking at before. Yep.
Okay, and we can talk more about all of this next time. We'll have a much longer meeting time next week when we all meet together. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and move forward. I'm going to zip through these slides real quick. Close your eyes. Don't get dizzy. Where are we? Okay, so I'm sorry to cut that short, but we only have half an hour left and we do need to get to today's presentation. Next week, we will be meeting face-to-face in Tallahassee on Thursday, November 3rd. I know you've had some travel questions and we're working on getting answers. If you've emailed me about a travel question and you don't have an answer yet, please email me again. Okay, so today we're going to cover sections on book selection in terms of pornography, age appropriate, suited to student needs and comprehension by Michelle B., Julie D., and Jennifer P. If we have time, which I don't think we will, but we'll see. If we have time, we'll also discuss slides on removal of books based on physical condition, circulation data, alignment to state standards, and out-of-date content, otherwise known as weeding. Those slides are from Lori Pick and Jennifer Pippin. And then we'll see slides pertaining specifically to instructional materials reviewers from Jamie Merchant and Michelle Beavers. That's a ton of information to cover, and we're not going to get to all of it. So anything we don't have time for will be discussed at the next meeting. Okay. So a little warning for this section coming up. Some of what is presented in these slides is graphic and you may wish to not view it. Now would be a good time to minimize your teams if you choose to do so. With that said, we're going to take a look at the first set of slides for this section from Michelle Beavers. So Michelle, I'm going to go ahead and have you take it away.
So of course, we all know what we're here for when it comes to the porn question, I think. And here's just a couple examples of what I think we already have in our libraries that need to be removed. So we need to, I guess, go to the next slide. That's just an intro slide to let you know what we're talking about. I don't think I can switch it. Okay, there it goes. This is the harmful to minors. And I just put it up there so that we could be part of the training that we would give our librarians, so they would have the verbatim of exactly what we're talking about. And you can read it as, if in question, the librarian should err on the side of caution with regards to material that's potentially harmful to minors and in violation of our statute. And this again is just more information I think we should be including in our training so they can see what the law actually says, because I think it's important that they know exactly what it is we're talking about and what the law says, so they can look over both the Department of Justice and also our local statute. Okay, so I think that really it breaks down to 3 questions, and I think these are good 3 questions we should put in the training. Does this book have scenes that are sexually explicit? And that's our first prong. That the 3 prongs were on the other page, written out in the fashion of the statute. And the second one, do Floridian adults in general think this is suitable to minors? Since our state has decided to teach in our health education that it's abstinence before marriage, I feel that most of the things then would be considered sexually explicit should not be in our schools. So we, as a whole, we've decided it's abstinence till marriage. Then as a whole, our guidance as adults would be that we don't have this stuff in front of children. And then the last prong would be, since we're teaching abstinence as our standard, I'm sorry, this is not, I don't see where, somehow this slide's been messed up. I don't know what happened to my slide, but it was A, B, and C.
Oh, sorry about that, Michelle. When I the formatting, when I brought it over, I had to do some editing just to make it appear larger on the slides. So I'm sorry, it may have.
We dropped the last question though. I don't know. So, okay, so just go to the next slide.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, okay. I don't see, it's not changed. Okay. Well, no, it got completely gone. It's not here. Part of the presentation is missing. I don't know what happened to that. But let me see if I can pull up on mine so I can go through it with you, because it's not in here now. Sent to everybody, but I don't have it on my thing. So let me look up. Okay. I'll just go through it on here too. Okay, so the first one was, the last one we're talking about was is the literary content so important that it would completely justify the sexual content and exposure to minors? And is there other material that with similar content that can be used that has great literary value? That slide said it is important to note that it says serious literary value, meaning that just literary value is not sufficient to overlook sexually explicit, pornographic, or obscene material. It'd mean that a librarian would have to justify the material as having a great literary value. And this will be a difficult thing to do, because the intent of the law does not mean to dance around the idea that any literary value is justification for explicit material. When you read, when there's porn in a book, it doesn't go away when you read the whole book. So it needs to be of a high bar of what serious literary material means. That was the last slide, but I don't know what happened to that last question, but it got deleted somehow. Okay, and we're on to the next one. This would just give you the penalties for explain what is a 3rd degree penalty. It's rather significant, and I would want the librarians to be aware of exactly what that means, so there's no misunderstanding of how serious the state of Florida is taking this. Next slide. So these are some ideas and solutions to what would be concerning to a librarian, so they wouldn't be worried that they'd be in trouble for something. So if they're evaluating material, it's already in the library, and incoming material, the librarian has the option to offer an opt-in system for material if the librarian is not completely sure if the material has serious literary value. Material placed behind the librarian's counter and only accessible parental opt-in or to those students who are 18 and up is a viable alternative that should be utilized. We currently have a system in my school district. This makes it clear that parents are aware of the material and are choosing to allow it to be given to their children. Materials need to be off the regular shelves as to prevent browsing and reading in the library by unsuspecting minors unaware of content. This option has maximum stakeholder choice if the material only has the idea of serious literary value as the reason for keeping it in the library system because it meets the other two prongs of scrutiny. Librarians should be aware that this may not be protection from prosecution as a felony conviction if they have it behind the counter, but at least it would be, I think, more defendable. So that would be, I think, a good suggestion for the concerns we're having about librarians being in trouble. Next slide. So here's just some planning to purchase ideas about ways they can vet the books, looking at 3 reputable sites or peer-reviewed sources. And I would also suggest 1 crowd-reviewed source just to see what somebody else would have said out there that may have not been included, because a lot of these have parents who get on there and let other people know what's in the material. Do a keyword search, just like you do on the computer when the kids are at the library. They already have that filter in place, using the same exact keywords to filter. I want to point out my email was censored from the school districts to be able to send to Amber because it had sexually explicit material in it. If it wasn't okay for Amber, maybe it's not okay for our kids too. So but I think the librarian should publish their list and give the stakeholders, which are the parents, a chance to look over that list before purchase so that we don't lose any funds in our library by purchasing books that ultimately won't be on the shelves. Check the district list for books that will already be considered not something you should buy for your district. And then check Florida's soon to be published list of books that have been challenged. And those books should be looked at very carefully before purchasing them because they've obviously been through some challenges. And that's pretty much, I think, is that the last slide? Oh no, parental rights, sorry. So I think you can read this yourself, but basically the idea is if you want to have a book in the library and it doesn't meet all 3 prongs, in other words, you're not 100% sure or you're pretty sure that it doesn't meet serious literary value, then it's behind the counter, or simply if it hits the first 2 prongs where it has sexual material in it and should be behind the counter, it shouldn't be out where everyone can get to it, because just like a PG movie, you'd expect a parent to come and get your kid into an R movie if that's what you want to opt into, but you don't have to opt into PG movies. So those are for everyone, just like the books in our library should be for everyone. And then if you want your child to read something else, you can either, you can let the librarian know through writing that that's what you want to, for your child. And that gives the most choice to parents. So you can either decide to have it or you can decide not to have it. But you don't have to worry about a librarian taking a book out of your child's hand and wasting your child's time in the library because they picked up a book that they didn't know had this material in it. And these are just 2 different sources because I think it's also important we let the librarians know why we don't want this in our libraries. They should have some reference of the damage it's doing. So I think this one and the next slide also just gives them a little perspective of what the importance is and why this is why the state of Florida has decided this is not a good idea. And that's it.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick so I can go to find what you sent me, because I want to assure you that I did not make any changes to the slides that you sent.
Oh,
and if I did, it was completely unintentional as I was, messing with the formatting and stuff to get it in there.
No, I wasn't meaning to say it was intentional. I'm just saying it got dropped off. But
right.
I don't know how it changed, because that's weird because mine was ABC and yours said it was AA. So I don't know what happened when it transferred over.
Just the formatting, it just messed with it. And I'm trying to find...
That's okay. You don't have to prove it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Everybody got sent it individually, so they all know it was there. It's not.
Right. Yeah, I don't see it. I have it on my desktop somewhere, but it messes when I change screens.
I didn't mean to make you feel that you had done that personally.
No. I apologize. I just wanted to share the exact slides that you sent, and I assure you I did not intentionally change anything, but it sounds like something may have gotten left off. But the work group members did receive your full slides because they came directly from you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share again and go back to our slideshow here.
Amber, are we going to go through each one before we have conversation?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
like to get through this section and then we will talk about it as a whole.
Okay.
Okay, so this next set of slides is from, thank you for that, Michelle. This next set of slides is from Julie. So Julie, go ahead and take it away.
Hi. Here we go. Okay, I'm excited to be here to talk to you today. I am, by way of introduction, I'm a parent, and I am concerned that other parental rights groups in our state continue to be given outsized influence on the educational decisions of my own 4 children and other public school students in our state. I'm going to go kind of fast because we're limited on time here. All students have the right to access information and ideas in our public school, and just because one group disagrees with some ideas or content, that is not grounds for removal of the product. And I'm really hopeful that this work group can produce clear guidelines to equip our school's media specialists with the tools they need. And I'm really looking to acknowledge that I'm not the expert here. I am a parent who has concerns, and I want especially to hear from the experts on our call for their edits and feedback. Okay, so slide 2. So I kind of took the approach of these are not like the actual slides that we present to the group, but here's kind of how my interpretation of how I think it might need to go. Ultimately, I think the training should help school librarians and media specialists, especially new ones who maybe don't have the expertise in training, understand the statutory requirements. So I agree with Ms. Branch on, or excuse me, Ms. Beavers on that. Reduce confusion and fear surrounding selection of material. This confusion and fear is sort of causing a all-out freeze on purchases, which is ultimately harming our students. And reiterate the importance of considering the whole value context of literary materials as a whole, not piecemeal. Let's see, we can go to the next slide, please. So I kind of think of it in 3 parts. The first part would be to include the copy of the statute, and I would certainly want legal experts to weigh in here. As one of my other work group colleagues mentioned, the statutes are really wordy and can be kind of confusing. So I also think, we can go to the next slide, Amber, that it would be very helpful to provide some guidance on how to interpret or apply the statute. I do think it's helpful to include the definition, and I think we really need to include some guidance for media specialists on how to apply the Miller test, which I'm not a lawyer, but some little bit of research tells me that that's the 3-part definition for determining if something is obscene. Just because someone says it is pornographic does not make it so. There is Supreme Court precedent on this. But I think we need to hear from the legal experts to make sure that we're providing the proper interpretation of this rule. I'm gonna go, thanks. Yeah, next slide. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes. I'm trying to go quick because I know that we're limited on time. So if we're gonna provide resources to media specialists to help them guide their selections, we kind of went over this during the first set of slides, but I think it's really important to help them know what is sort of like a go. This is a periodical that you should look to help guide decisions and provide definitions on how to determine if something is peer reviewed or professionally prepared. And I think that districts should trust the science around this and should trust the experts. I think we should include a slide that says selection should not be guided by, so sort of like you should avoid these types of reviews. I like the crowdsourced language that is in the earlier slide set, but I think we included a list of Amazon, Goodreads, Common Sense Media. I would say maybe also social media posts, political groups, special interest groups, and also I think we should caution or maybe equip media specialists with the knowledge that you should not make decisions based on red flag phrases, which I know is a tactic. things taken out of context, sentences, words, chapters taken out of context, ignore that third part of the Miller test, which is sort of the, I mean, again, I'm not a lawyer, but that's the essence of the test is, does it contribute literary value as a whole? So I think the bottom line there is districts should rely on existing opt-out channels for individuals to exercise their parental rights. And then I also think, again, this is a little bit duplicitous, but we should engage stakeholders and include ways to how to engage them and also clarify what is the stakeholder role in the selection process. It's advisory or providing input or feedback, but it's not ultimately decision making. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So I thought it might be helpful to put a slide that says, here's what you should use to guide your decisions. And I want to heavily rely on the work group library experts to help fill out this slide. But first of all, I want to say we should rely on the training, education, and expertise of school-level certified media specialists. I think we should reiterate the importance of providing diversity of viewpoints and critiquing the material as a whole. So no keyword searches, no chapters or passages taken out of context for shock value. This is important. We need to look at whole material review. I just did a Google search and some searches for titles to look to for providing maybe some selection guidance, but I think others will probably do a better job on that. I think we should include a slide that says you should not be guided by reviews from these types of selections and include a list of those. Let's see, you can go to the next slide. I know I'm going fast, I'm sorry. I did want to include a slide on parental rights and just say, I mean, the reason I wanted to be a part of this work group is a lot of people like to talk about parental rights, but there's a group, I would say a small minority, that are speaking for lots of us, and their parental rights end when they start inflicting on my parental rights for my children. Parents definitely have the right to screen what their own children read, but no parent has the right to decide what another person's child should or should not read, especially in public school. I think parents need to be partners with public school educators, but public schools are by design supposed to rely on the expertise, ethics, and discretion of educational professionals to make decisions. So I want to trust media specialists to do what they've been trained to do. I did want to, before I go to the censorship, I just wanted to say, so I live in St. Johns County, and in our county, we have an opt-out protocol. So if you don't like the book, especially since we're requiring schools to list all of their books online, if there's a book you're worried about as a parent, you have the right to go search that database, fill out an opt-out form, turn it into your school. If you don't like it, don't read it. End of story. I'm sure other counties have good policies that we could provide as examples. Next slide. And I feel like I would be missing an opportunity if I didn't talk a little bit about censorship. I think it's important to make the distinction between what is available in a library for access compared to what is available in a classroom for classroom instruction. The mere presence of a book in a library is very different than a teacher proactively teaching a topic in class. So I feel like the two get muddied a lot, and that presents a lot of First Amendment problems. So I think we should be really careful when we are making that differentiation in the group material. I'm not going to read the whole slide to you because I think that everyone can read it themselves, but the final slide, just sort of some key takeaways. I think the online training should reiterate the importance of evaluating literary works as a whole, and we need to remind people that context matters. It needs to be guided by statute, so I think everyone on both sides can agree on that. Training participants should walk away with a solid understanding of the definitions and how to apply them. I think our training should value the education, experience, and expertise of the school media specialists to make informed and appropriate selections for their institutions. specifically, you know, they know their audience best. A school that maybe is a magnet school for the arts is going to have a different demand for books than a school that is a magnet school for engineering, for example. And I think schools should continue to provide appropriate community and parent engagement in the selection process. I think we've talked about this before, but I think it would be a good idea for us to provide examples of what's working. And I like what Amelia said about kind of a flow chart of here's how you can engage and at what process, and here's the role of the stakeholders in that process. And I think I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Julie. I really appreciate your comments in that section. We're going to go ahead and move quickly to the next slide. These next and final slides for this section are by Jennifer Pippin. A warning here again about graphic images on the screen. If you do not want to see them, now is the time to minimize. Okay, Jennifer, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much for this. We can go to the next slide. I was just introducing what we were talking about. Okay, so what I did with this slide was we are here as a work group to follow the statutes, to follow the laws. It shouldn't be up for interpretation. So I just listed some of the statutes, you know, with the pieces taken out for specific pornography statutes. I did not list all the statutes in its entirety. It would be over 100 pages. We don't have time for that. And then this example here is a book that is in Florida schools. It's across middle schools and high schools across Florida. And a lot of people are saying that this is not pornographic. And if this specific book was a movie, it would be rated R or X. And I just wanted to put it as an example of, you know, one of the literature items that we are talking about, because people have said in this training that some parents and some media center specialists are against the word lesbian, or they're questioning, you know, other books. When I'm talking about pornography and sexually explicit content, and when I see it as a parent and as a person, this is what I see as pornographic, and definitely against state statutes that are clearly written. Next slide, please. This is the one of the pornography laws. So it's 847.001. I'm not going to go through all of these definitions. You can do a public records request to get this, or you could look up 847.001 on your laptop or phone device that you're on. But, you know, people try to get hung up on the taken as a whole. When you are looking at these books, just because you have Little House on the Prairie and there's a centerfold in the middle of it, that book would be against state statute. So again, here is another example of a book that is in Florida schools. Again, middle schools and high schools. I haven't heard of it in any elementary schools to my knowledge. But this one here, again, specifically against state statute, the woman's breast is exposed. This is oral sex. So even though, you know, children may want to read this book, or you have a 16 or 17-year-old child who is a minor is a definition 17 and under, against state statute, this would be inappropriate for them, even if it was something that they wanted to read, or if they like character acts, or if they are exploring their sexuality. This one specifically here would be against the state statutes and laws for minor children. Next slide, please. Again, so here is some more laws, 847.012, harmful materials to minors. Again, I'm not going to go through everything. You can see it. You can public records request the slides. We have not gotten a clear definition on pornography, so I have two in my slides here. So one's for Merriam-Webster, and on the next slide, you'll see the next one. But again, another book in our middle schools and high schools here in Florida, and this talks about a 6-year-old giving oral sex to other people, including adults. So now we're bringing, you know, pedophilia, possibly incest, you know, with some of these books. And again, there may be a child transitioning and may, you know, take interest in this book, but this book, again, specifically is against the state statutes and laws that protect, you know, minor children in a school library, you know, that the main audience is children. It's not an adult content, or they're an advanced reader, they're an IB level. This is against the state statutes, and we need to stick with that, you know, for our work group. And I think that's so important. So next slide, please. Again, so definition of pornography, I looked it up on the free dictionary because there is none that I could find, state statutes or laws that define pornography in the context that we're using for curriculum and library books, as we're challenged to do here. And, you know, part of this as well is age appropriate, but there is another DOE work group that's going to do that. So I didn't want to touch on that too much and skew their work or, you know, focus too much on that since they're doing it. And this book here, Sold, by Patricia McCormick, currently on the library shelves in Indian River County in high schools. We did challenge this book. It's pending review. A 11-year-old girl and 14-year-old girls were sold into sex trades, and they were raped. There was talk about putting, you know, spices into their genitalia if they didn't perform. It was pedophilia was in there. And you can see some of the excerpts from this, you know, book here. So again, if you were to read the book in its entirety, there may be something to learn about, you know, sex trafficking, and, you know, stay closer with your parents, you know, have a teacher that you trust, things like that. But looking at the state statutes and the state laws, this is a direct violation of these state statutes, again, that we're supposed to be putting this information together for the work group. And you can see at the bottom of my slide here, I believe this work group needs an opinion of the Attorney General and the definition of pornography, harmful to minors, and obscene as it relates directly to library books and curriculum in the hands of minor children. Again, our audience is minors, 17 and under. Yes, we will have the occasional, you know, 18-year-old, but in my opinion, I think as we do this work group and as we do this training, all of these books that are getting challenged for sexually explicit content, pornographic content, belong in the adult section of the public library. So this way, if a parent does want their children to read these books that are not with the statutes and laws for the state of Florida, that parent still has the ability to check that book out with their child and discuss it with them. Again, people touched on parental rights. I'm not going to go through that again. But just because a parent allows their children to read this book doesn't mean that the school districts and, you know, FLDOE can not follow the laws and statutes that are here to protect children. So again, I thank you very much for your time. And if anybody wanted to do the public records request for these slides or the laws and statutes in its entirety, absolutely do so. I just wanted to highlight the ones specific to what I was challenged with these slides. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing at this time so that I can see all of you again. Work group members, we are right at 2 o'clock. I do want to leave 10 minutes for public comment. I know there's a large number of public on the call. I was hoping to end right at 1:50, so we had time to do that, but the slides went a little bit longer than I was expecting. Work group members, any comments, reactions, feedback quickly at this time?
I think we need to be sure, you know, some of the slides, I love bringing up the statute, making sure that we're clear on the statute. I think some of the slides bring up a lot of curriculum pieces, like the health statutes and those sort of things. I think it's really important to be clear that the role of the Library Media Center, while it does support curriculum, it's also there for self-selected reading for all of our students. So we're not always going to fall into the same statutes that are taught in the classroom because we're here to support reading interests of our students. So while we're always going to follow statute, when we're supporting those reading interests, we're not always going to follow those directly in terms of, you know, if the state supports abstinence, then we're only going to have books in the library that support abstinence as well, because we're here to support a balanced collection for all of our students. So we need to be sure that we're maintaining the stance that our school libraries are for self-selected reading, because that is what school libraries are for.
Any other quick comments?
Sure.
I have a quick comment, and it's not anything towards any of the presentations. I apologize. I'm appalled at the chat room. I don't know how many times April has been telling people to stop with the public comments and wait. And I don't care about their opinion. They've been given instructions, and it does not look good. It looks unorganized, and I think that, I don't know how, I mean, it's our last what, online team, Zoom, whatever this is, meeting. So there's nothing you can do moving forward, but
I agree.
That's all. I'm sorry.
All of us on the work group have been incredibly professional with each other, and I feel like we've worked really well together. And to see the things popping up in the chat while we're having professional discussions, even if we don't agree with each other, is really unnecessary in the state of Florida, and it's certainly not helpful.
I just want to echo what Michelle Jarrett and what Julie said. Both of them mentioned making that strong distinction between the student use in the library and that instructional use, because it's two very different things. That our world has changed a little bit with this new legislation. So I think it's really important in our training to make that distinction. And then I also just want to kind of point out something that we all have in common. I know we disagree on what it looks like, but none of us want pornography or material that is not age appropriate in our libraries. We may disagree with what that looks like respectfully, but that's where the statute comes into play. That's where our community standards come into play. And that's where we have those strong challenge processes on the back end, so that we can build our collections the way that we need to do all the things that we are also tasked with doing, with having those balanced collections, the diverse viewpoints, meeting those needs. Keeping those teenagers reading in high school at 18 years old is really hard, so, and just pointing out that thing that we do have in common. So. All I got.
I appreciate it. I appreciate that. But we still have books like these in our libraries, which means somehow there was a disconnect and somehow they got in our libraries. So we just need to address them, because I don't think anybody in this group thinks those books we just saw is a good idea.
I think it comes back to community standards, and I think each library and area needs to have things in place, and they do. We're required to have those challenge processes and those grievance procedures. I'm not disagreeing with you on any front. I just think that looks different everywhere.
Well, as long as we're following the statutes and the laws, it's for the state. It's not county to county or school district to school district. It has to be streamlined, which is why this training is so important, why it was put together, because we can't have certain school districts saying this is okay and it's not okay here. We have to have it completely streamlined. And I think, with the examples that we saw, some people may not realize, what is in the libraries and what's not in the libraries, or curriculum, things like that. So I really appreciate everybody on here being so kind and letting us go through, our presentations, even if we don't agree, but this is how we fix it and make it better for the state.
Okay, with that, I know there's a lot more to be said here, but we do need to move to public comment. We're only going to do a minute or two for public comment. And if you do not get called on, please feel free to, a lot of you have entered your comments into the chat. You may enter your comments into the chat to be official part of a record of this meeting. You may also email myself or IMstaff at FLDOE.org, and we will keep those comments as part of the meeting record as well. So I'm just going to call on the public that has their hands raised, and I apologize, we are definitely not going to get to everybody that wants to speak today. Stefana, go ahead.
Okay, so what I want to say is that these slides seem to be leaving out, as they narrowly define parents that prefer not to restrict their students What we believe is that every student, no matter their race, sexual orientation, gender, lived experience, they deserve to see themselves reflected in a book in their school library. And as we approach young adulthood, try as we might as parents, not every student will abide by the wish to abstain from sexual activity. So yes, that means that they should have access to books that contain sexual conduct. So as long as there's literary value and something that they can learn from the work. If we're going to teach abstinence, we have to teach the risks of not abstaining. And that means that they could safely learn through the mistakes that a character is making in a book versus making them in real life. By relegating stories like The Hate U Give, drama, or even When Aiden Became a Brother to the restricted shelf, or worse, the public library, you're saying to some kids, your stories do not belong here. That's not a message I'm comfortable with sending to my kids that belong to a multiracial and LGBTQ+ accepting family. We want inclusive shelves, and we don't want a couple of conservative parents segregating what they deem inappropriate out of browsing reach. The presence of sexual
comment. It's been 1 minute, and I'm so sorry to cut you off, but we have a number of people that want to speak. T, the letter T is next. T, go ahead and speak. I believe you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. I just want to say that I agree with Jennifer Pippin, Amber Bobuk, and I believe it was Michelle Beaver in the beginning, that we should follow the law. We need to err on the side of caution with our children. I think that was a statement that we really didn't take as seriously, that we need to be cautious first. The thing I was worried about is if we put a book behind a desk, there is a concern that a child will take that book into the hallway and pass it out. And then unless every child has watched it every minute, I think if you're going to do that, you take the book to the parent from the librarian and back to the librarian. You don't have it walking through the hallway of the school. I disagree with Julie Deschelle. I believe a small section of the book is important, and that children, once they see something, it cannot be unseen. Also, book lists online and by publishers have been shown to not always be age appropriate and allow pornography. And so we really need to take a look at who we're trusting online and publishers. I think it's very important that we do remember that the training is for the state and not per county, because not every parent.
I'm sorry to cut you off. It has been 1 minute. We're going to go to the next person, which Barbara. Barbara, go ahead. Oh, did they put their hand up? Okay, we'll go to Kim Hurst.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I wanted to say to the one parent, being harmed doesn't give you the right to perpetuate harm by inflicting it on others. So just because you may have experienced sexual trauma as a child and you want to relate to a book in the library, that doesn't mean that you get to perpetuate that harm onto an innocent child who has never been that victim. Also, I'd like to say, to define serious literary, scientific, artistic, or political value, you have to really take a look at the word serious. Merriam-Webster defines the word serious as thoughtful in manner, requiring much thought or work, having important consequences, not light or frivolous, implies a concern for what really matters. The educational benefit of the overall content must seriously outweigh the risk of harms associated with subjecting students to extremely graphic sexual or racist content. And the studies are far and wide. They are far-reaching and uncontested that sexual pornography and graphic sexual content is harmful to all minors, and that you are to err on the side of caution.
Kim, thank you for your comment. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next person, Julie. Guest Julie, go ahead. She's muted. Julie, can you unmute yourself? Okay, if not, we're going to jump. Julie?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The Florida Parents' Bill of Rights in Chapter 1014 says the parent has the right to direct the upbringing and the moral or religious training of his or her minor child. That's a direct quote. I believe this right is violated when a minor child picks up a book from a school library that turns out to be explicitly pornographic. These books often teach something directly opposite from their parents. And at least in Hillsborough County, we're discovering that our libraries are landmines of extremely graphic, sexually explicit content filled with moral ideologies opposite many parents. And these morally charged books subvert the parents' right to direct the moral upbringing of their own children by contradicting the parental direction in kids' lives. So I'm asking you to enforce that law by protecting children from ideologies that subvert parental rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Deb Clark, go ahead. Deb Clark, you're unmuted. Go ahead. Okay, then we're going to move to Justine. Justine, go ahead and unmute. Okay, then we're going to move to Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi. So I don't think any of the sexually explicit things should be in any part of the school, for whether it's the classroom or the library. There are plenty of literary things in the libraries that are good for children. I don't know why all of a sudden things have to have sexual content in them to be considered good, or whatever people who are on here are claiming. So they're claiming also that their parental rights are being taken by simply going to the library and checking the book out for their child or sending a note for their child. It's other people's rights that are being affected, because my child can go in and grab a book off the shelf and see something that I don't think is appropriate for a child. So I don't understand what, and also they're claiming that certain groups are ruining their parental rights, when it's actually the state of Florida laws that are ruining their parental rights, if that's
Jennifer,
what they.
sorry to cut you off. Thank you for your comment. Carrie, go ahead. You are next. Carrie, go ahead.
Well, listening to these slides and listening to you talk, it sounds like that you're saying that the teachers have a curriculum and it's governed, but the libraries are not part of that curriculum. They're there to just supply books and encourage kids to read. Unfortunately, that is not true. My kid last year, 7th and 8th grade, had to go to the library, had to participate, and got tests from the librarian, and it affected his English grade. The same thing is happening in high school this year. And I don't think it's right to expose kids to books that are inappropriate. And a couple of the books that he was exposed to and was reading was very inappropriate. It wasn't pornography, but it was something else, and it really upset him. And I just think that you need to really think. The librarians have a lot of exposure to kids, and they set up books so you check them out. And the displays, it's not a very simple.
Carrie, thank you for your comment. I'm sorry to cut you off. Jen Cousins is going to be last, and we're going to end today's public comment with Jen. If you did not get a chance to comment publicly, I apologize. You can put it in the chat or email me. Jen, go ahead.
Hi, I would just like to say that, it's incredibly disappointing to watch in this chat today the Moms for Liberty people who have tuned in yelling at everybody to follow the law while they can't even follow the rules to not put anything in the chat until public comment section. Also, if y'all have such a bad time with public schools, homeschool. Stop trying to control what our kids have access to. I'm sick of people like you calling my family groomers. I'm sick of people like you telling my non-binary child that there's a problem with them. I'm sick of you telling my kid that's gay that there's a problem with them. Y'all need to back off and worry about your own families.
All right, thank you, Jen. And with that, we are going to end today's meeting. Thank you very much for being here. Workgroup members, I will see you next week, and we will email before then. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Amber.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you, Amber.
Bye.